ready to go.
Okay. Take it away, girl.
Okay. Question, Mike.
Yeah.
So we were thinking about angels. We know we might have touched on it before.
Yeah.
But we've been getting questions about, how to engage with your angels, what to do, what does that look like, how to get to know your angels. Could you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, I think the angelic realm is a source of great controversy in general charismatic circles. It's not so much of a great controversy in more historic church circles, particularly Anglican churches and that type of thing, because they have a history of engaging the angelic in a sense. But for seeing that angels are ministering spirits to minister to those who are the heirs of salvation, they have a key role in helping us fulfill our purpose and our receiving our full inheritance as sons of God, and they interact with us in various ways. You have the sort of classic guardian angels that are assigned to us, and you can see from Hebrews their role, and I think most of their role is protection, because we've not really interacted with them in such a way that they would be seen as someone who could minister with us and for us. And you have church history. People like William Branham had an angel that stood with him and when he ministered, and therefore he was able to receive revelation of people's sicknesses and various things. So you have a sort of a history of the angelic. I mean, even actually in Toronto, I can remember in the very first things of the sort of outpouring of the Spirit in Toronto, in the air when it was the airport vineyard, children particularly, seeing angels ministering to people, putting cotton wool on them, as they described it, when they were bringing healing, or actually even tickling them when they were laughing. And I think a lot of what we have attributed to the Holy Spirit is actually the angels ministering on God's behalf, interacting with people. So they bring sometimes a sense of God's presence, the angel of the Lord, and the angel of the Lord spoke on behalf of the Lord. The angels brought messengers, Gabriel bringing a messenger to Mary, messenger to Daniel, bringing a prophetic message. So there is, right through the Bible, you can see the interaction between sort of created beings and human beings as God's emissaries. Even in the burning bush, Moses saw an angel, and the angel spoke before God came. So they often come, and they're representatives of the hand of the Lord and different physical attributes of God. The eyes of the Lord going to and fro throughout the earth. Well, then later on you hear about the seven spirits of God, who are the seven eyes. So there's a lot of interaction really between the angelic realm and their role. And you have their role originally in terms of the watcher angels before the flood, who were responsible for watching over. And of course they left their estate and then messed things up big time by overshadowing and genetically engineering things. So our personal angels, we need to become sensitive to that angelic realm. Now, how do you do that? Well, you activate the eyes of your heart, and you know that you've got two angels at least who are there as guardians, and therefore you engage them. Close your eyes and begin to say, I want to engage with my angels. So I want to picture them. And if you then use the eyes of your spirit, then you may become engaged spiritually in that realm and see things or perceive things in a slightly more in a way which is more of a knowing what's there and engaging. Most times you're not going to see them with your natural eyes unless they manifest in human form. People do seem to pick up orbs with angelic capacity, if you like, in photos, and videos seem to capture orbs where our human eye doesn't. Although, you know, some people do have more sensitivity when it comes to that realm. We can learn to engage that realm. And, you know, if you can't see anything, don't let that stop you, because you can, by faith, engage that realm and talk to the angels that are with you and ask them their names and what their purpose is in your life. And wait, just as you've heard to listen to the voice of God by tuning into Scripture and tuning into the thoughts of God and the Spirit speaking to you in your mind, and you've learned how to speak to God in intimacy by talking and conversing with Him, then you can do exactly the same, use exactly the same principles of hearing the thoughts when you talk to those angels that come into your mind as they communicate to you, because they're going to communicate to you in your mind like everything else communicates to you. God communicates to you. Everything from the natural realm communicates and is interpreted in your mind, and they operate in the same way. So you can talk to them and ask them who they are, and then once you've engaged, whether it's visually so that you have a perspective of what they look like, or whether it's just, okay, I sense their presence, or I'm going to talk to them anyway because I know that they're there by faith, and I'm going to interact with them as thoughts in my mind, then you can take the next step in using their role as a ministering spirit to minister for you. One of my angels often brings things into ministry settings that I'm going to give away to people: crowns, weapons, jewels, you know, and comes in that way. One of my other angels, one of the angels that often comes in terms of ministry, a breakthrough angel, I sense that angel's presence in my right arm, because my right arm is the place of authority, and I sense authority comes into my right arm, and my right arm throbs and feels power in it when that angel's around. So I've learned to become sensitive to it. Sometimes they bring fragrances, and very often the fragrances we pick up in meetings, and some people smell things and some people don't, which indicates that it's not a physical smell. It's a spiritual smell, essentially, or a fragrance that some people tune into spiritually and other people don't. And sometimes there are strong perfumes that are around with the presence of the angelic realm that people can pick up. And the same thing, sense of, you know, sometimes Jesus comes and he carries a fragrance with him. So I would encourage people just to engage at the level that they're able to, and just continue to practice that. And then as your spirit begins to lead and direct you, you find that your spirit will direct those angels to go ahead of you, preparing the day, preparing the connections in the kingdom that you need for that day, providing the resources that you need for that day. And, you know, that's just at that level. You have within the realm of heaven on your mountain, and your throne on your mountain, representing your position of government in the realms of heaven, there is an angel that has been assigned to caretake your throne until you're in a position of maturity to govern there. And I used to think they were the Ben Elohim, but they actually, recently I've discovered they are the Malachim, or the kings, who basically are assigned to govern that place of your heavenly authority until you are in the mature place to govern it, and then they're there to help support you as a reference point for judicial protocol that you can engage with them. I didn't really engage with my angel for a long time because I didn't realize it was there, and because I was just on the throne doing stuff rather than looking around and finding out. You know, I do things very differently from what I used to. So now it's like I would have looked and seen what was there and been more cognitively aware. But I haven't engaged with that angel, and it's there representing my position of government. And those are your own personal angels that you can connect with. Then there are angels that are connected to you via assignments. So if you have mandates given to you from God, there will usually be angelic assignment to that mandate to help you fulfill it. And that may mean that you have angels that are assigned to the atmosphere of the earth. You may have angels that are assigned to send out calls or messages into the earth, and they will go and interact with people, engage in their dreams, engage in their visions, to call them. Depending on what your mandate is, there are different angelic involvement. Abraham, when he sent Eliezer, his servant, to go and find a wife for Isaac, basically said, the Lord will send before you an angel. And when he got to the well, all sorts of stuff had already been put into process, because the angel had stirred some things and had created the environment where he would meet the right person. So and I think that was Rachel, I think. So there are lots of different ways angels are involved with us individually, personally, depending on our calling and destiny. You also have the angels that are involved in the different courts of heaven that are, and I use angels as a loose generic term for created beings, spiritual beings, because some of them don't look very much like we think, in terms of a human type form. Some of them have animal type form, like lions. They look differently. Eagles. There are different angelic forms. Winged horses. And then you have the class of angels, the chaos, which are the living creatures, and you have fiery chariots and fiery whirlwinds and fiery swords, fiery horses, golden ladders, all sorts of different actual angelic beings, but they're not in what we would see as a classic sort of human form or shape. So once the throne of God is on your life, and you have God enthroned on the seat of government and the seat of rest within your spirit, then the angelic canopy recognizes that position of government and comes around you. Just like the myriads upon myriads of angels that are around the throne of God, because they recognize the authority of God on his throne, there are 10 canopies, 10 classes or orders of angels that are in that canopy that come around your life because they recognize governmental authority and become available to you. Now, I'm not sure whether they are the 12 legions of angels that Jesus said that he had assigned to him. And if we're joint heirs with Jesus, then I get the impression that we get 12 legions of angels assigned to us, which is quite a few, 1,000. And they may well be those that are specifically assigned to our destiny around our lives for various places. You can engage the Chancellor's Court, where there are Chancellor angels. You can engage the Court of War, where there are angels, Court of Angels, where the whole angelic order is, and you can see those that will be assigned to your mandates, or you can go and get them assigned to different things that you're doing. Lots of different engagement. Of course, you have wisdom and wisdom's handmaidens, and you have wisdom as a created being, but being there before all the other created beings were formed. Interesting, sort of, when you look into it, it sort of expands into a whole load more than we first imagined or thought. The sort of 10 canopies of angels, you have those that are closest to the throne are those that are in greater authority. So starting from we say layer 10, but it's like it's the closest to the throne. You have the Ishim, and they are carry the judicial system of heaven, and I think some of those are messengers, and some of them operate in the chancellor's roles. You have the cherubim, obviously, those that are around the ark, and they carry the faces lion, ox, eagle, man, and the different wings, and they have their involvement, but they're pretty much close in to the very throne of God. You have the Benai Elohim, sons of God, and that includes some of the archangels, Michael and others, and those are generally around the government of God and the courts of God. You then have the Elohim, and some of those have seemingly been described as lions, who have that sort of function of engagement in things. You have the Malachim, or the kings, who are the ones who are the watcher angels, the sentinels, gatekeepers, watch over some of the mountains of God. Seraphim, burning ones, involved with the temple and the burning coals, very much involved in transformation. A lot of key areas which they involve. You have the Kashmelim, or the shining ones, brilliant ones, who are involved in worship and the very image of God. And Erolim, the mighty ones, they sit over, classed as territorial spirits who have different places in heaven. The Ophanim, or the wheels within wheels, who are the power sources of God's power and move his throne around the galaxies and different things. And then you have the Chaos, living creatures, Metatron being the chief of that order, keykeeper and timekeeper of heaven, and is responsible for times and seasons and opening doors and opportunities of engagement there. So many different roles. Then you have the hunter angels, who are sent out, in they're pretty powerful warfare like angels. They've been described as having like razor-like wings. You have the gathering angels, who remove stumbling blocks. Many different created beings, and they're all created individually, and they all have a name, and many of them were associated with the stars in terms of the star systems, and each star had a representation of an angel that was representative in the heavenly sort of constellations and things. So yeah. Sure. Yeah.
That's good.
Is there anything more specific in terms of what you do, or?
Perhaps. Just how do you know? For instance, when Isaac. Oh, sorry. You described a situation where a father sent out son, is it Isaac and Jacob, or
No, Abraham sent out Eliezer to get a
sorry.
wife for Isaac. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah,
and
sorry.
he said, "The Lord will send an angel before you."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he ask for the angel, do you think, or the Lord told him that there's an angel? How did he understand that? Or was it that the Lord told him that there would be an angel, or he just understood from his interaction with angels that the angel would be there? Sorry, that's a little bit more.
Yeah. It's not recorded, so without asking Abraham specifically, I don't know, but it's very clear that Abraham was able to engage with the angelic realm, hence his engagement with Melchizedek and the three angels that came, and the angels that were going to Sodom and Gomorrah. There was involvement with the angels and the angelic realm there, and we need to understand that Abraham was able to see into the spiritual realm. And I think Ian Clayton talks about it as where he was lifted up his eyes and he saw the three angels approaching him. Well, what was he looking? Was he looking in the natural realm, or was he looking into the spiritual realm? And then they came and manifested in the natural realm. It seems that he did have an understanding of how God used angels as ministering spirits. because Abraham was the clear heir of salvation, if you like, the seed of Abraham. So Abraham, in a sense, had the covenant to be a blessing, blessed to be a blessing, to see all the world blessed. And so I would see that if there are ministering spirits to the heirs of salvation, as the heir, as the father of faith, in that sense, he would very clearly have angelic involvement in his life. I believe that when we speak with the voice of God, and of course, if you think of Abraham and Isaac, Abraham was promised a son who would be the seed that would be the father of many nations. So in that sense, he had heard God's word, and he needed an heir who would produce an heir. So he had already the purposes and plans of God in place. So when he began to speak in alignment with God's purposes, the angels would be activated anyway, because they activate when we speak with the voice of God, with authority according to God's purpose. And people would say, oh well, it's okay because God sent the angel, and it says that the Lord will send an angel. But very clearly Abraham knew that the Lord would send an angel. And did the angel go as a result of Abraham's mandate authority to be the father of many nations, and responded to him? Some of it is a moot point. I mean, it happened, but he understood, and I think that's what the point is. We can understand, and we can learn to interact, and therefore we can learn to have angels on assignment to help us fulfill the mandates that we had. Abraham's mandate was to be the father of many nations, be the father of faith, and there was angels who were helping him in that mandate. And of course you have the same with Jacob, and open heaven and Bethel, and angels going up and down the ladder, and Jacob being able to go up and down the ladder as well. So there's an ongoing angelic involvement in their lives. Same Moses, angel of the Lord appears in the burning bush. There's certainly Joshua, angel of the Lord of the hosts, chief of the angel armies. I mean, that's a pretty good angel to have turned up when they were looking to enter into their inheritance. So again, it's all about helping us come into the fullness of our inheritance, and they certainly are involved in that in a big way.
One more quick comment. So if you're in trouble, let's say, is it appropriate then to call for the angels to help you? I had a situation where I thought that happened. So can you comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, if there are ministering spirits and they're there to minister to us and with us and for us, then why wouldn't we assign them to help? And I know people would say, well, why don't you ask God? Well, look at what God did to get Peter out of prison, or Paul out of prison. He sent an angel. So God uses angels to help us. And there were very specific instances recorded. Sometimes angels came, like visited Cornelius. Now, whether that was a total open vision or whether that was a personal angel who manifested in visual sight, Cornelius heard the angel say, call for Peter, and where Peter was. And of course, Peter had another angelic engagement where the angel told Peter to go to meet Cornelius. So there's a lot of angelic involvement in the New Testament and in the early church, and I don't see there's any reason to suppose there wouldn't be for us. And by all means, I think we can ask for angelic help. They're God's servants and ours, so why wouldn't we? You know, if God has given you a servant to serve you, why would you go to God who gave you the servant when he's given you a servant? It's like going asking God to do something that he's already said, I've assigned you a servant to help you in these things. So we, you know, God is not in the slightest offended that we ask for help from his servants who he's assigned us to help. That's what he's done it for. You know, we're not worshipping that servant. It's there to serve us, you know, which is great. You know.
That's good, because that would have been my next question, is that do you ask God, or do you, I sort of know the answer, but do you ask God, or do you assign the angel from your authority given by God?
Yeah, you do. You know, and I think this is a lot of confusion, or, you know, religious sort of deception, that the enemy wants to rob us from this interaction and this engagement, and that removes from our lives, if we don't believe that we can interact, or it removes those ministering spirits from helping us. You know, and then what are we doing? Well, we're praying and asking God to help us. Well, of course he will, but often he'll then go and assign an angel to help us anyway. We just aren't aware of what's going on in the spiritual realm and the battle that goes on there. And of course, you had the angel who was sent to bring a message to Daniel and was held up for 21 days in the atmosphere of the earth by the enemy trying to block that messenger. So I really don't want to pray and ask God for angelic help and it take 21 days to arrive. So I'd rather interact with the angels that are around me in my sphere. Don't have to come through the atmosphere of the earth. They're in the angelic realm around me, the realm of the kingdom that's around my life. If I have a realm of the kingdom around my life, and of course that needs to be manifested through my spirit, soul, body, to create that atmosphere where the angels are interacting. You know, and again, most people don't create that atmosphere, so they don't actually really have that sphere of authority around them like they should. But that's what we're supposed to have flowing from the inside out, the presence of the kingdom, so that creates an atmosphere which draws the angelic. Angels love our praise, they love authority, so when they recognize authority, then they get connected to it. Demons love bad attitudes, anger, resentment, bitterness, you know, all those, envy, greed. They love all those things and they get drawn to us if we present those around us. So, you know, if you have a dark, heavy cloud of oppression over you, it's usually because you've drawn it. You know, it's like it's usually our own fault. But we've either said something, done something, carried a bad, stinking attitude that has drawn that canopy, and they're very happy to come round us and make a nice dark cloud over us, and so we feel heavy and oppressed most of the time, because we've given them permission to do it by what we've released around our lives. Unforgiveness is a huge one that draws the enemy. You know, so yeah.
Elizabeth wants me to tell my story, so
Yeah, go for it.
okay, well, it's a little story. I was just this week, I was having difficulty starting my car. I think I let the gas go down a little bit too low, and you know, the sediment or whatever. I went to fill up, and went to the shopping center, went in, and then when I came out, I could not start the car. It just was not starting at all. I tried and I tried and I tried. I was getting frustrated. And then I just, you know, after I sat there, I thought it would settle. Sat there for quite a while. 15 minutes went by almost, and, you know, I tried again. Nothing starting. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to go to the throne room and ask for an angel to come and help me start this car. And so by faith, I did that. And in the eyes of my spirit, I just saw one wing like this. Just, that was, I saw wing. I guess that was my cue. I don't know if they all have wings, but
Not all of them, no, but
and then I just felt, okay, try now. Then I tried and off it went. I was so thankful. So that's what happened.
awesome. Yeah, very good. And we've got lots of testimonies of angels bringing things, lost things. I've lost my keys several times, and I've looked, and I sent an angel out, and I looked in the same place that I looked before, and the keys were there. They weren't there the first time. A number of things like that. My wife's always losing earrings, and she always asks the angels to go and find them. I mean, one day she lost an earring in the supermarket, which is across the road from where our building is. And she didn't know she lost it there. She just lost it. So it was like she noticed it was one was missing. So she sent an angel, she said, to help her find it. Well, a guy came in to the day center here, and he's let's say a rascal or a rogue, let's say. He has a very interesting history with the police and various other things. And he was over the road in the shop, and out of the blue noticed an earring, and then brought it over the road. And this is a guy who wouldn't do anything like that. Felt compelled to bring it here and handed it into reception, and it was the very earring that my wife had lost. And I believe that was an angel prompting him to notice it, and then prompting him to bring it, because it's just completely out of character for this guy to do anything nice for anybody, let alone to go out of his way to pick something up and then take it out. He didn't even hand it in the supermarket. He took it out of the supermarket and handed it in to us. And so again, that was I believe an angelic intervention. And we have loads of testimonies of those type of angelic interventions, and bringing lost things and helping us. We have a stand-in joke in our house with our daughter, because when we've lost anything, well, we'll just send the angels to find it, and she just looks at us as if we're mad. But actually, when it turns up, she's just like, oh, I guess you're going to say that's the angels again. But in reality, it is. My wife lost her journal the other day, couldn't find it anywhere, and sent the angels out to find it, and found it in our grandchildren's room, in the cupboard. There's just no way it would have been in there. So sometimes they have fun with us in where they bring the things. Sometimes for those, I know there are testimonies of Bill Johnson and things like that, where the angel just manifested the thing in thin air and it just appeared. I remember someone losing their mobile phone or something, and it just appeared in their room out of thin air, out of one realm, and quantum tunneled into another one. So there's many stories of angelic help. And you have the classic stories of missionaries in the jungle and their camp, and they were going to be attacked by tribesmen, and the tribesmen basically didn't attack, and then later on they get saved, and they sort of tell the story that we were going to attack you in the jungle and we were going to kill you, and we couldn't because that you had these great big men protecting your camp, which was angels on assignment. And of course you have that with Elisha and his servant, and the army around Elisha, looking to capture him or whatever, and the angelic realm was, hey, there's this whole load of fiery chariots going round that realm protecting us, and Elisha was completely at peace and rest because he knew his protection, and the eyes of the servant were open so that he could see into that realm as well and see the protection that was there from the angelic realm. So yeah, lots of potential things there with that realm, and we're just scratching the surface when it comes to government. because I believe that they're very much waiting for us to mature into our government so that we can take our place in the courts of heaven, because we should have charge of the courts, as it says in Zechariah 3, rather than they have charge of the courts, because they're waiting for us to get to the point where we could be entrusted with that level of authority. But it's coming, if we're willing to walk in his ways, and if we're willing to outwork his principles and begin to rule the house, then eventually we will get charge of the courts. You know? So, yeah. That's good.
Mike, I had 3 little questions. First one is, it seems to me, and I know you did it when you were here in Toronto, that you should probably be using your angels all the time to deal with the atmosphere around in your home, your meeting, business, everything. And one thing I often do is, I don't know if it works or not, but I call them to just remove anything that would cause me or my kids or whatever to get into any negative trading. And I guess I just want your comments on clearing the atmosphere. The second one was, when you call on your angels, do you call on them, I call on you, or do you say, in Jesus' name? I know that's a little point. And then the final question I have is, when we go before the ark, I believe, we're going as like a cherubim when we stand around the ark. And I seem to recall, and I just wanted your thoughts on it, that when we go before the ark, what the cherubim did was they get wisdom and revelation, but not knowledge. And I think the story, I think Ian talked about, if I'm not mistaken, is that Lucifer had wisdom and revelation, but he didn't have knowledge, or he wouldn't have done what he did. And so finally, if we go up for our mandate, when we're going around, we have our mandate in us, we're going in there to get wisdom and revelation of our mandate, like a cherubim. I guess they would carry around in them wisdom and revelation. And that's it.
Okay, yeah. When I always interact with the church angel, our church angel, and I get that church angel to clear the atmosphere over our meetings, over our building, over our sphere of government, and I just assign him to do it. And I call him by name and just say, clear the atmosphere. You know, clear anything negative that's looking to hinder or block, you know, the purposes of God being outworked. I think if you're looking to deal with the atmosphere over a city or a region, if you have that level of government, then it's not as simple as just saying to the angel, go and do this. There are other things that judicially you have to have dealt with. You know, the reason that there are territorial spirits and rulers and forces in the atmosphere is because of generally what cries out from the ground, usually blood or things that have created culture where people sin and other things in the environment authorize and give authority to that which is in the atmosphere, and you get a vicious circle. You know, you get more things operating, and therefore more authorities given as more people succumb to that culture and live out maybe a culture of violence, or it could be a culture of greed or prostitution or immorality or whatever it might be. You know, and so there's more than just clearing the atmosphere. You have to deal with the demonic bench of 3, which is the things that operate in the realm of the kingdom. So there may be giants, dragons, and that type of thing in the spiritual realm. They give authority to that which is in the earth as a result of the familiar spirits that are operating in the earth. And so if you try and deal with one without the other, then you're always going to still have an arc to continue to form the third. So you've got to deal with 2 parts of that triangle. Otherwise, there's always going to be an arc that can to remanifest that. And that's what most people don't do, and that's what's not being done consistently to change things permanently. So you may try and deal with the atmosphere of the earth, but if you haven't dealt with the giants, then there will be agreement between the giants or the dragons and what's going on in earth, and therefore the atmosphere of the earth will continue to be empowered. If you try and deal with the giants, but you don't, or dragons, and don't deal with the atmosphere, then you still have that going on the earth, which will again elect that to be operating in the realm of the spirit. And so I think we're going to learn more about how to deal with and remove that bench, if you like, that the enemy counterfeits God's bench, in a way that we'll begin to see transformation. And I think that needs to take place in the church or the ecclesia or the cities of refuge before it's going to take place in the community. You know, what hope have we got to transform our community when most of the things that are going on in the community affect the church in just the same way? Immorality, divorce, all sorts of things which operate in the community, sickness, you know, everything, you know, unless we're living under a different law and a different government, then we're not going to be able to take that government and expand that government. So we need to establish open heavens, everlasting doors open, and a cleared atmosphere over our spheres of government, and particularly over, you know, if depending on if we're an ecclesia or whatever we are, we must make sure that we're not giving any authorization to the enemy by operating in the same cultural things, and that could be a culture of unforgiveness, it could be anything, you know, that operates like the world. Well, if the church is like the world, then there's no way that the church is going to be able to transform the world. So we have to be different. So let's start with our individual lives. Let's make sure that we have nothing that we are giving authority into our own governmental sphere. So we have no dragons and giants on our mountains and on our thrones or around us. Then we can clear the atmosphere over our lives, so we can live under an open heaven. So we will not be affected by culture. We will not be affected by the place we're living in negatively. It's like we carry Bethel around with us, you know. So we live in the Bethel scenario of an open heaven, being a house of God and a gateway of heaven. That's our life. Then as we come together with others in agreement with a purpose, a mandate, a blueprint to be gathered together as an ecclesia, then we can begin to multiply that and see all of us operate from that place where we clear the atmosphere, where we have nothing of the enemy operating in us, where we're coming into a place of holiness as operating in righteousness in the realm of heaven. Then we can see an exponential increase in the clarity or the clearing away. But of course, you know, it says that if one sin, all sins within the church. So one person's effect when we're together has an effect on everybody. So we've got to be careful that we maintain unity, that we have good relationship, that we don't give any access point, any room for the enemy to do anything which hinders or blocks. Now that is a tall order, unless we create a culture of honor and a place where we can really work through in openness and honesty and transparency the relational issues that the enemy uses most of the time. Insecurities, fears, jealousies, all those type of basic things, being upset with each other over various things which we shouldn't be, but we do. We're always going to give the enemy some access unless we stop that. So I think once we really start to establish the kingdom and we start to establish, you know, embassies of heaven on earth, then we will begin to be able to clear wider areas in the atmosphere. We'll begin to open more everlasting doors. We'll be able to see the glory of God poured out on the earth as it is in heaven, and things will begin to dramatically change as we begin to take ground. But right now, I think the focus is, let's make sure that we're living holy lives from our position of righteousness, and then as we join together, that we're living in relationship with one another, which is outworking the principles of the kingdom as well. You know, treating each other the way God treats them, loving each other, demonstrating love and joy and peace and all the things that are representative of the place of God rules. So, do I use the name of Jesus to send them? Not personally. I am in the name of Jesus, so I have the authority of being in his name, so what I say carries his power of attorney anyway, so I don't need to use the term. I know my identity as being in him, so I'm already in his name, so I speak with that authority. I don't say the Lord send you or anything like that. I just tell them what I feel my spirit authorizes me and mandates me to do. So, to take out scrolls, to start shaking systems, to create a few earthquakes figuratively in some systems of men, some governmental systems, to change things, to call people, to resonate, to go and visit people's dreams, all sorts of things you can assign them to do. I just do that from my mountain, and that's it, basically. In terms of the ark and the cherubim, yeah, the two cherubim looked into God's purposes, and the holy, 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 the sort of Ian Clayton's sort of the wow, look at that, look at that amazing stuff, and of course they there were to reflect with the 9 stones that covered their body out into the universe that revelation. Now, when it comes to wisdom, knowledge, understanding, yeah, they're sort of interesting things, aren't they? What does it mean? Traditionally it would be, wisdom would be the capacity to understand how to do something with the knowledge that you've got. Because wisdom and knowledge to me go together. Understanding, what is understanding? Well, understanding must come when you've got wisdom and knowledge. So I don't fully say I understand exactly what they did, but obviously there was something that Satan didn't know and wasn't privy to in all that he saw. And even when he was on the firestones of God, seeing the purposes of God for man, he didn't fully understand all of it, so I don't know. My personal view of it would be that you get wisdom and knowledge, and that brings understanding. And how can you have understanding without the knowledge or the wisdom? What could you understand if you didn't know anything and you didn't understand how it worked? So, and sometimes I think the knowledge of God and is more about the what's behind it, the heart behind what God is intending to do. So he wants to reveal his heart. So we don't just know the what, but we know the why. So you can know the what and the how and the when, but not know the why. And it's the why which is really about the precepts of God and understanding the very nature of God, which is the why that he does things. And I think there's a lot, that, again, the more we engage and understand in our intimacy with God, the more we understand his heart, the more we can engage in what was, when there was no record of sin, then we begin to see things more from his perspective, and then how that helps us is we can outwork it from his perspective. And I think there's a lot more that we will find in intimacy with God that brings that revelation to us. But there's a sense when I look into the ark, I'm looking into the 4 faces of God, and I'm looking for the fullness of his government. I'm not looking for intimacy in the same way that I would engage him in my own spirit, or that I would engage him in his garden or the throne of grace or even the tree of life. This is about government. The ark is about government and seeing the purposes of God from a governmental perspective, which is why you need priestly, kingly, prophetic, and apostolic to get the full picture of his government. And I wonder whether some of that is representing some of that aspects of you're talking about: knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and might. And some of it is, as we engage with the four faces of God, then we must be receiving that revelation to help us bring the government of God from those perspectives of bringing godly order, of bringing the oracles of God coming out of eternity, of bringing the government of God out of eternity, as well as the priesthood, which enables us to go into eternity in the first place, to be able to access that revelation, then to bring it into what we do. Which again is part of the understanding the order of Melchizedek and the four faces and how they work in government. So, yeah.
Mike, the things that you talked about just now, about how we keep our atmosphere pure and that place of unity, seems like you're privy again to conversations yesterday that I had with someone, and what you've done is just confirmed some of the things that we talked about, and what would be the next step for our ecclesia. And so I think on our gathering. So thank you for that. That was a real big confirmation right there.
Yeah.
Of what you talked about there.
I think it is so important that we have a river of living water flowing through us, to being joined to the Lord in one spirit with Him, that our spirit encompasses our soul and body and creates that atmosphere. And that means our soul isn't creating the atmosphere, but our soul is in agreement with our spirit to bring love and joy and peace into that atmosphere. Because that's ultimately what people are going to experience. They're going to experience the vibrational frequency of the love of God in a place of peace and joy. And when we fill that atmosphere with love, peace, and joy, and love is an expression of righteousness. So the Holy Spirit, it talks about righteousness, peace, and joy, but love is the full expression of righteousness. Then that's what people were going to experience when they come around us. If we fill that with our soul and our negative feelings and emotions and attitudes and mindsets that come from our soul, then that often will be a negative atmosphere, because it will contain within it fear, anxiety, worry. It'll contain potentially insecurity, resentment, bitterness, unforgiveness, all those type of attitudes and behaviors. Then that will draw more of that. Like draws like, and we just have to be careful that what we say, that we don't speak negative things into that atmosphere that gives the enemy access. We need to be speaking the truth in love. We need to be declaring and decreeing things into our atmosphere, the favor and blessing of God. It's an expectation that we walk under an open heaven and therefore have the blessing of God and the fullness of His government available for us. If you live under a cloud of oppression, then none of that is going to be taking place. So it's very important that what we fill that atmosphere with, and it's our choice. We get to choose whether it's coming from our spirit or coming from our soul, independent of our spirit, which is often where the negativity comes. When our spirit and soul function together and our body is just in perfect unity with it, then everything that will be around us will be a radiation of the glory of God. And ultimately, we want to be radiating glory, so that there is actually a light that's shining around us that people can actually see. But that light will again carry the frequency of God and will be an expression of His image through us as His children. So very, very important. Yeah.
I've noticed, like, even in a home base and on a personal level, that the atmosphere changes quickly when certain negative attitudes and it doesn't even have to be a word, just the atmosphere and what you aura that you exude, right, or emit. It just affects the atmosphere. And when there is that atmosphere of honor and peace and joy and love, and it just completely shifts again that atmosphere. I've definitely noticed that. And even at a church level, for example, like in worship, when the minute the angels are invited, Tasmanian angels especially, which I invite them during worship, as soon as they're invited, the atmosphere shifts.
Yeah.
Right? And you could see there is something, a difference that begins to happen. Yeah. So that's really neat, Mike. That's amazing stuff you've shared there with us. Really amazing. And I like the way it's practical. Like we could apply this now. So we've gotten some good gold this morning.
Sure.
Thank you for
well,
that.
In a sense, it has to be practical. If it's not practical, then it's just not earthed out. And so, and I think, the criticism of, super spiritual people, well, you're so heavenly minded, you're no earthly use, is a valid point. I'm not saying we shouldn't be heavenly minded, because we need to focus on above, but that focus on things above is so that we can manifest those things through our life. And where it talks about think about those things above, and in the Philippians where it says think about these things, whatever is good, whatever is honorable, whatever is, thinking about those things, well, that's what will fill our atmosphere. And we need to make sure that we are living as a gateway of heaven, and seeing the river of living water, those rivers flowing from our innermost being, actually filling the atmosphere around our life from what flows from inside out, from our first love gate connected to heaven. And then the source of life from heaven, the refreshing river of life, the fruit of the tree of life, the grace that comes from the throne of grace, all can flow and manifest through our lives in a practical way which people can experience. And even those that don't know us, if they come close enough to us, will feel something of an atmosphere. They will feel something of a vibrational frequency. And it will either repel them or draw them. Because sometimes you get poles of a magnet, and there's a repelling or there's a drawing, depending on which pole. And so sometimes people come around their lives, they can't stand to be in our presence because they feel so convicted about their own life, and so they don't stay around. But others are drawn, but we should create a reaction one way or another, because we carry the vibrational frequency of the love of God around us. We shouldn't just be nice. I hate nice. Nice is just mediocre. We need to be hot and cold. Jesus said, I'd rather you be hot or you be cold, not lukewarm. We don't want lukewarm niceness. We want to demonstrate the reality of the power of the love of God, which is not nice. Jesus wasn't nice, by the way. He didn't say nice things very much. He was very truthful, very honest, spoke the truth, brought reality into every situation. Ask the Pharisees if he was nice, when he called them a whitewashed tomb and a brood of vipers, being of your father the devil. He wasn't very nice. He was very nice to his mother on one occasion. On another occasion, he challenged her because she was coming out of the wrong heart and motive. And so I think I would encourage everyone to look at Jesus and get a red letter version of the Bible and get every word he spoke and see how many of them were nice. They weren't. They were direct, honest, full of love, but sometimes confrontational and direct. Always to bring life and to cause people to come into a life, not death. There was no condemnation, guilt, or shame. And even the Pharisees, if they listened to him and responded to him, sweeping the money changers' cables out of the temple and cleansing the temple, they could have changed. But they didn't, because they had too much that they had invested themselves and therefore weren't prepared to let it go and embrace a new way. So yeah, we need to be those that provoke a reaction to the kingdom by carrying the authority and the power and the love of God, that eventually even our shadow heals people because of the glory of God being manifested through our lives. That's the sort of people we should be. But for that, we need an open heaven. We need an open gateways in our life. We need everything flowing from heaven through us. And that's just the pathway of responsibility that we all have every day. That's not the pathway of relationship. The relationship every day. Responsibility is a whole different thing in the realm of heaven to bring government. But we still, we can't bring government without manifesting something practical through our lives as a gateway. It's got to be real. Which is the challenge, because we're all in a process of transformation. Of course, it's not just happened. We're all being transformed and conformed to his image from one degree of glory to another. And we must have grace for each other in the process of transformation. That's so important, that we realize that we're all on a journey, we're all in a process of transformation, and we must have that grace for each other to recognize, that but for God's grace, I might be in the same position as anybody else, and therefore recognizing that they're in a journey and helping them through their journey, not just criticizing or condemning because they get it wrong or they mess up. We must all have permission to fail so that we can learn from those failures and grow without fear of being condemned or made to feel ashamed or guilty, but encouraged and supported. And, the one another's of Scripture are a really important factor. To love one another, bear one another's burdens, pray for one another, minister to one another. There's a whole load of statements in the New Testament which were the things that happen to one another. And those are the way we should live towards one another to create that atmosphere of love and a place where we can all grow, and where people will be free to say, do you see that error in your life? And you say, what area? Can you show me? Yeah. When you do this, you say this, and you say this, and it comes over in a very harsh way. Do you realize? No, I didn't realize. I need to go and find out why that's there, so I can deal with it, and then I won't be that way. Because we've all got blind self areas that we need other people to speak into. Now, we can be proactive, where we can ask God to directly show us, and he will, some things, but sometimes he still uses people because he wants to see whether we're willing to humble ourselves and receive from somebody else. And that's a case of, where we are humbling ourselves, then he will exalt us. And sometimes it's not very easy to take criticism, because we see it as criticism, but if we take correction, it's a totally different thing. And if we know that people love us and are for us, then we don't have to be insecure or feel threatened when someone says something to us. We just have to embrace it and take it to God, and then get the transformation that it brings into us. And I think when we create a culture of honor in our gatherings and in our relationships, where we are free to be open and transparent with others, and where they're free of being honest and open with us, then you're going to have a whole different expression of the life of God and what ecclesia should be in relationship with one another. Because there won't be gossip, and there won't be any of that stuff that goes on, because we'll be for each other, loving each other, and wanting to genuinely see each other fulfill our destiny and come into our inheritance as children of God. Not being threatened by someone else's, because we know who we are. So, yeah. Anyway, there we go.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Okay.